Every single morning, before the sun even comes up, a household is jolted awake by a screaming match. On one side is Kavita, the family cook. On the other is Savita, the cleaner. Their dispute runs on a very simple, very stubborn loop. Kavita believes standing over a hot stove all day is grueling, highly skilled labor, and that wiping floors is easy. Savita believes scrubbing the entire house is backbreaking physical work, and tossing ingredients into a pan takes no effort at all. They view each other as lazy and entirely incompetent. The mother-in-law occupies a difficult position. She carries the responsibility of a household manager, but lacks the tools to enforce order. She is stuck watching her domestic operations fail every single day. This chart shows the standard dynamic of a household. A manager sits at the top, directing the employees below. If the employees refuse to work together, the manager should be able to fire them. But in this house, the patriarch made a binding family oath to keep these two specific workers employed indefinitely. The workers know their jobs are absolutely safe. Because of that oath, the manager has zero leverage. She cannot issue a credible threat of termination, creating a completely trapped ecosystem. When employees are untouchable, interpersonal friction stops being a private grudge and starts dictating the entire quality of the household's output. The conflict becomes the dominant feature of the house. You can track the exact blast radius of this toxicity. The kitchen fills with unwashed pots because Savita refuses to clean up after Kavita. The living room stays dusty because Kavita won't move an inch to let Savita mop. Meals are half-cooked, floors are wet, and the entire house hums with hostility. Then a high-stakes stress test hits the system. A family arrives at the house to evaluate the granddaughter, Nia, for a highly anticipated marriage proposal. The manager issues clear instructions to prep the house, but the maids ignore the directive. Instead of cooperating to serve the guests, they use the pressure of the visit to sabotage each other. The kitchen becomes a war zone of spilled milk, scattered flour, and burnt food. The result is an external disaster. The visiting family sits in a messy living room, waiting endlessly for food, only to be served stale snacks. They see the chaos, judge the household as poorly managed, and quickly reject the marriage proposal. Unchecked infighting never stays contained to the break room or the kitchen. If employees spend their energy battling each other, the actual product degrades, eventually bleeding outward and destroying the reputation and future opportunities of the entire system. The daughter-in-law realizes the current system is unsustainable. She pitches a behavioral experiment designed to cure the maids of their arrogance by forcing them to experience the other's workload. Here is the structure of Intervention A, the empathy swap. Look at these task columns. For exactly 1 week, they will swap their roles entirely. The cook will take over all cleaning duties, and the cleaner will assume total control of the kitchen. The physical results are an immediate disaster. Savita, now in the kitchen, ruins the dough with too much water and heavily oversalts the lentils. Kavita, holding a broom, kicks dust up onto the furniture and leaves wide tracks of dirty water across the floors. But the psychological reaction is what truly matters. Even as they fail visibly at each other's jobs, the toxicity continues. They sit in the living room, completely exhausted, yet still whispering insults and mocking the other's total incompetence. This exposes a harsh reality about manual labor and ego. Failing at a task doesn't automatically humble a person.
Instead, they rationalize their failure and maintain their arrogance, convinced the other person is still somehow to blame. Forcing an employee to walk in a coworker's shoes will guarantee physical exhaustion. But if there are no personal stakes attached to that failure, empathy alone lacks the power to dismantle a deeply entrenched ego. With the house falling apart and the family going hungry, the managers, the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, have to absorb the systemic shock. They tie back their hair, enter the kitchen, and take over the grueling manual labor themselves. The physical toll is immediate. By the end of the night, both women are leaning heavily against the kitchen walls, their backs aching, eyes heavy, finally understanding exactly how punishing the daily chores actually are. But this exhaustion triggers a strategic pivot. The mother-in-law realizes that forcing empathy on the workers failed. To break the deadlock, she prepares Intervention B, a direct attack on their self-interest. Effective leadership sometimes requires stepping into the trenches, not just to ensure the work gets done,
but to gain the undeniable moral authority needed to finally drop the hammer. The month ends. It's payday. The mother-in-law calls the maids in. They stand there, hands folded, fully expecting their standard, guaranteed salaries. Instead of handing over the money, she conducts a brutal verbal audit. She looks at them and asks, considering the ruined meals, the dirty bathrooms, and the marriage proposal that collapsed because of their behavior, so who exactly produced value this month? The room goes dead silent. The mother-in-law picks up the cash, splits it cleanly in half, and hands a stack to her daughter-in-law. She keeps the rest for herself, stating plainly that they are the only two people who actually did the work. Then she delivers the ultimatum. The leadership will continue doing all the household chores themselves and keep all the money. The maids are welcome to stay in the house, per the family oath, but they will sit there and watch for free. The manager found the loophole. She couldn't fire them, but she could completely decouple their job security from their financial compensation. The constraint remains, but the power dynamic instantly flips. The sight of the cash changing hands changes the internal math for both women. The abstract idea of job security vanishes the moment they see their income physically diverted to someone else. They realize their untouchable status only protects their presence in the house, not their paycheck. This financial shock lands on top of the physical exhaustion they felt during the job swap. They already know how difficult the other's work is. Now they realize that neither of them is actually essential to the family's survival. They are forced to reckon with the fact that their petty war has made them both a liability. They rapidly correct their behavior. Both women immediately fold their hands, apologize for the damage they caused, beg for their roles back, and promise an absolute end to the petty rivalry. The next day, the results are undeniable. The cook prepares the food quietly. The cleaner scrubs the floors without complaint. The house runs with perfect silent efficiency, and the toxicity is gone. You cannot reason an employee out of toxic behavior if they suffer zero consequences for it. Words, requests, and even empathy-building exercises bounce off people who know they hold the leverage. Empathy is a highly useful tool to build mutual understanding, but if you need to break an entrenched toxic ego and save a failing system, you have to prove that bad behavior carries a strict, unavoidable economic cost.